What is deadly serious about it is the Attorney General of the United States of America was not telling the truth to the Congress of the United States. That's a crime.
Speaker Pelosi, hardly the only one hurling accusations about the Attorney General's testimony yesterday. Senator Mazie Hirono, the Democrat from Hawaii, said the same thing right to Barr's face yesterday. Take a listen.
You lied to Congress. You told Representative Charlie Crist that you didn't know what objections Mueller's team might have to your March 24th so-called summary. You told Senator Chris Van Hollen that you didn't know if Bob Mueller supported your conclusions, but you knew. You lied. And now we know.
Now, throughout yesterday's hearing, Barr, he pretty much stonewalled Democrats, and he went out of his way to defend the president. Here he is responding to Republican Marsha Blackburn, where Barr tried to paint Donald Trump as the real victim of the Mueller probe.
You know, how did we get to the point here where the evidence is now that the president was falsely accused of colluding with the Russians and accused of being treasonous and accused of being a Russian agent, and the evidence now is that was without a basis. And 2 years of his administration have been dominated by the allegations that have now been proven false.
My next guest says the report shows that the obstruction case is much worse than we knew about. Former federal prosecutor Roland Riopel joins us. And Roland, for me, before we even get into some of the consequences that came out of yesterday, the absence of the testimony from Barr today in the House, I wanted to believe, and shame on me for being so naive, at the confirmation hearings, maybe I was listening for what I wanted to hear. But because, you know, Barr certainly seemed like a far more competent version than Whitaker on his best day, because he talked about Robert Mueller as Bob and about their close social ties over the years here, and that he was such an adherent to transparency and the rule of law, I really didn't think we were rigging the game. And then I see his conclusions that he drew up in that summary. I then heard what he did in that sham of a press conference the day that we had, later in the day, I should say, the actual report released. And then I saw the performance yesterday. And my God, can't we even have an attorney general that wears stripes like a ref here instead of shirts and skins? It was so, more than just frustrating, it was disappointing yesterday.
Oh, Richard, you know, and I was right there with you when Attorney General Barr was in the confirmation process. I believe that he would act as attorney generals typically have acted over the last 200 and nearly 50 years of our republic, as adherents to the rule of law, who provide a kind of guide rail to a president, and who are semi-independent and willing to speak truth to power. And yesterday, Attorney General Barr left us no doubt that he is a partisan. He is not a defender of the Constitution. He is a defender of Mr. Trump. In fact, the little bit that you played where he said, you know, the collusion thing has been disproved, that's not true at all, and that was not Mr. Mueller's conclusion. Mr. Mueller's conclusion was that there was not adequate evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and therefore not adequate evidence to bring a charge of criminal conspiracy in connection with the dealings with Russia that Mr. Trump's campaign had over and over and over again. It is clear the Attorney General will do the president's bidding. And whether that means indicting Roland Riopel because he says bad things about the president on the Richard French show at night, or attacking Hillary Clinton again over the Benghazi nothing, we are in for a rough ride here, and we are much, much closer to an autocracy.
I don't want to put him on the couch. I don't want to waste our viewers' time or go in an area where we're not equipped, but I see only two rationales for what Barr has done really in the last month. One is that he basically sees his role as a personal attorney for the president, and either it was agreed upon before he was nominated for the position, or he just sees that as his role. Or two, he really thinks that he's the smartest guy in every room that he walks in. He assumes that his position, and he said as much, Roland, that when the document came to him, he would be the arbiter of findings. He would decide what the conclusion of the report was. When Charlie Crist asked him a pointed question as to whether or not there was any issues on the part of the prosecutor, of Mueller and team here as to the portrayal of the report, he lied outright under oath that there wasn't. And then he used the term "we" yesterday when talking about the administration, and he wouldn't answer the question if two things. One, anyone either opined or asked to have anyone investigated. He wouldn't answer that going forward. And also, he wasn't transparent on another key issue as well. My point is, does Barr completely misread his role? Or has he just decided to be yet another person who's going to do whatever he's got to do to help out Trump, consequences be damned?
I think it is the latter. I think he has made a choice that keeping this president in office, letting him run roughshod over all the norms of the presidency and the Attorney General's office and the relationship between the presidency and law enforcement that has been the norm for the last nearly 250 years. He's going to let Trump run roughshod over that because Trump will appoint conservative judges, which Barr wants. Trump will cut the taxes of the wealthy, which apparently is what Barr wants. To get these political goals, he is willing, Mr. Barr is willing, to put up with a dictator. And that's very sad to me, very sad indeed. I don't think the Department of Justice will be the same after this.
Roland, he was said, got to come today and testify to the House. He said he didn't like the form. Last time I checked, witnesses don't decide on the format of a hearing when they're called, but nonetheless, he said no. There's countless examples of subpoenas that the White House isn't even answering, turning over evidence that they're just outright refusing. What are the remedies here? And this goes even beyond Trump. Where are we right now when one branch of government basically decides, no, I don't report to you, I don't report to anybody, I'm going to do what I want?
Yes, we're in a situation where Congress should assert its authority by taking the actions in court to enforce its subpoenas, have the President and the White House and Mr. Barr and everybody else who refuses to respond to a subpoena appropriately, have all of them held in contempt, have them fined, have them jailed if necessary, and if they persist in this, the only remedy provided by the Constitution at that point is impeachment. That's all we got. And if we don't do it, and Mr. Trump consolidates his power and ultimately somehow takes over the judiciary too, we are going to be in a situation where we have an absolute dictator and no checks and balances anymore at all.
It really is, without exaggeration, a really frightening scenario. Roland, thank you, as always, for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure to be with you, Richard.
All right, everyone, when we come back, how the administration is trying to make life, believe it or not, even more difficult for those migrants trying to seek asylum in the States. Now, I know you think you've heard all the worst. There's more here. We'll be joined by the lead attorney with the ACLU, who has gotten sued against the government over those separated families. You will want to hear what he has to say after this quick commercial break.